Ghost ships in the silent ocean ... For years, in the vast Indian Ocean, there has been a tale told by sailors. A tale of ships that disappeared without a trace. As many as 2,500 ships that disappeared beneath the calm sea, as if swallowed by an unseen dark force. Legend has it that these ships did not sink due to storms or accidents, but were pulled by a mysterious entity to another world, from which they never returned. The Nusalot was the newest merchant ship. It had left its last port of call and was bound for Madagascar, carrying a variety of goods. The ship was filled with 30 experienced crew members, each confident that their journey would be anything but ordinary. 5 weeks of safe passage through known sea lanes, but after 2 weeks of sailing, strange things began to happen. That night, Captain Alex was standing on the deck of the ship, looking up at the night sky filled with stars. The sea was calm, too calm even for the usually stormy Indian Ocean. When he turned toward the horizon, he saw something that made his blood run cold. In the distance, dimly, was the outline of another ship, an old ship with worn sails, moving silently across the water. He was sure no other ship was scheduled to pass through that route, let alone one that looked so ancient. "We're not alone," he whispered to his co-captain, Bert. Bert squinted at the ship from afar, and his face immediately turned pale. That's impossible," he muttered in a trembling voice. "That ship is like the ship that disappeared more than 200 years ago." ... As the night wore on, the old ship grew closer as if chasing them. The entire crew began to feel an inexplicable unease. The wind that had been calm now blew cold, piercing to the bone. The crew found themselves having frequent nightmares, dreams of an endless black sea and dark hands reaching out from beneath the water, trying to pull them into the darkness. One night, one of the crew members named Bertrand went missing. They found him on the deck in the morning, standing at the edge of the ship, staring blankly into the ocean with blank eyes. He didn't say anything, just stood there, and when Captain Alex touched his shoulder, Bertrand dove straight into the ocean without a word. They tried to save him, but his body just disappeared in the waves. There was no ripple, no scream. It was as if the ocean had swallowed him. The next night, the same thing happened again. This time 2 other crew members, Dev and Sammy, disappeared in the same way. After they disappeared, noises began to be heard from the bottom of the ship. It sounded like soft rustling, whispers coming from behind the wooden walls, as if there was something alive there, waiting to get out. The noises grew louder and louder until it drove the other crew members crazy. Bert, who had been trying to be strong, approached the captain with fear written all over his face. "Captain, this isn't just the ocean, this is something darker. Something that's calling to us ... Alex tried to remain rational. "We just need to get to the nearest port. We'll be fine. ... But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Every night, the old ship was getting closer. Every night, more of the crew were disappearing. And on the 13th night, a most terrible thing happened. The old ship finally docked beside Nusalot, without a sound, without a vibration. The ship was like a shadow, and from above it, figures that were not entirely human emerged. They were tall, with bodies shrouded in black mist, empty eyes like glass, and long, slow-moving hands. The remaining crew ran in all directions, screaming in fear, but no one could escape from the figures. One by one, they were drawn into the darkness. Even when they tried to fight, none could touch the figures. They floated like shadows in the mist. Captain Alex, the only one left on the bridge, saw the figures approaching him. Suddenly, a flash of memory hit him. This was not the first time the ship had appeared at sea. He had heard stories from his grandfather, an old sailor, about ships that had mysteriously disappeared, pulled by a ghost ship that carried a curse from the depths of the sea. Realizing that resistance was useless, Alex stared at the calm sea, hoping that it would swallow him up too. But what happened was worse than death. The figures dragged him to the ghost ship into eternal darkness. ... Months passed, and the Nusalot never reached its destination port. Searchers found no trace of the ship, no wreckage, no distress signal. Like the other ships, the Nusalot has joined 2,500 others, lost in the unsolved mystery of the silent ocean, On dark nights in the Indian Ocean, sailors sometimes see the shadow of an old ship floating in the distance, moving slowly and silently. And those unfortunate enough to see it know what it means. The curse is still alive, and the ghost ship continues to seek new victims. A year after the disappearance of the Nusalot, the harbor was once again filled with stories of missing ships. Sailors whispered among themselves about the ghost ship that was now frequently sighted. More and more people claimed to have seen the shadow of an old ship with shabby sails, and the rumor began to spread quickly. The ocean was cursed. Among the crowd of sailors in the harbor was an old man named Mr. Benton. He had not sailed for years, but the story of the Nusalot reminded him of his past. Once, when he was young, he had faced something similar. He managed to escape, but many of his friends did not. One night at the harbor, Benton sat in an old tavern, looking out at the ocean in the distance. In front of him was a young man named Carly, a young sailor who was hungry for adventure, but had no idea what dangers lurked. "You know about the missing ships, right?" Carly asked, curious. Mr. Benton just stared at her deeply, before finally saying, "The ghost ships are not just legends, my dear. This sea holds more secrets than you can imagine. See those stars in the sky? The stars above this sea once bore witness to something older than all of us, something we do not want to disturb." Carly smiled thinly, thinking Mr. Benton was making up a story to scare her. Sir, don't scare me. I'm prepared for any kind of danger at sea. Anything. Double quotes. Mr. Bento took a deep breath. I used to think so too. But there are things out there that you can't fight with courage alone. When you see that ship, a ship that shouldn't be there, you have to know when to run. Carly shook her head slowly, still not fully believing it. But a week later, she joined a ship called Jaya Samudra, which planned to sail through the same route as Nusalot. Carly, with her burning confidence, was ready to face anything. Their journey started smoothly. The sea looked friendly, and the wind pushed their sails at the perfect speed. But on the third night, something strange began to happen. The ocean, once a deep blue in the moonlight, slowly turned pitch black. The air around them grew colder than it should have been, and the wind stopped blowing. An eerie silence filled the air, as if nature itself was holding its breath. In the midst of the silence, Carly stood on the deck of the ship, sensing something was wrong. Her eyes were drawn to the horizon, and there was a faint glimpse of something that shouldn't be there. The ship. Over there, she whispered to herself. In the distance, the silhouette of an old ship could be seen, with its sails torn and its hull ravaged by time. Carly's heart was racing. It was like the ship Mr. Benton had described, a ghost ship that pulled other ships into the depths. Carly immediately called out to the captain. "We have to turn around now. That ship, that's what they've been talking about." The captain chuckled, thinking Carly was joking. But when he saw the ship in the distance, the smile on his face faded. "What is this?" he muttered. Suddenly, a thick fog descended from the sky, enveloping their ship. All the lights on the ship suddenly went out, and the atmosphere turned pitch black. There was only a soft rustling sound, like a whisper from the seabed, that came closer and closer. Carly felt the air around her grow heavier, as if something invisible was crawling up from beneath the surface. In the darkness, shapes began to appear around the ship. They were like shadows, tall and thin, with white eyes that glowed in the mist. The crew began to panic, some running below deck, while others tried to turn the ship's lights back on. Carly ran to the wheelhouse, trying hard to stay calm. She remembered Mr. Benton's words. "When you see that ship, you have to run." But where could they run in the middle of the endless ocean? "We have to turn around." Carly shouted to the captain, who was still transfixed by the old ship's approach. "Or we'll be lost like the rest of them." The captain finally came to his senses and tried to turn the wheel, but it was no use. Their ship seemed locked by something invisible. The wind died, their sails drooped hopelessly. They were already trapped within range of the ghost ship. From the mist, heavy footsteps approached. Carly could feel something approaching, something that carried a bone-chilling chill. And when she looked back, she saw the figure. A man with a broken body, his face pale and covered in wounds, wearing a uniform worn by time. Behind his broken face, there were eyes that burned with a glint of immeasurable anger. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered in a hoarse voice that echoed in the air. Carly stepped back, trembling, but the figure approached quickly, his hands outstretched towards her. Like the others, Carly knew there was no escape. The next day, news spread in the harbor of the Jaya Samudra's disappearance. Like the Nusa Lot, it had vanished without a trace. The sailors in the harbor spoke again with fear. Now, not only were there stories of 2,500 missing ships, but another had joined them, the ship that the ghost ship had pulled into the eternal darkness of the ocean. Mr. Benton listened to the news with a blank stare. He knew what had happened, but he could do nothing. The sea had chosen its victims, and the ghost ship, still sailing through the mist, waited for its next victim, and those who saw it knew it was too late to escape.